The proceedings.
Order, order. We start with questions to the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Jeff Smyth.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Question 1.
Secretary of State.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 1 and 7 together. But before that, if I may, I'd like to start by welcoming the return of the devolved institutions to Northern Ireland following the publication of the Safeguarding the Union command paper last month. And earlier this month, and the Windsor Framework, which was agreed exactly a year ago yesterday. I'd also like to take this opportunity to mention that the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission and Equality Commission for Northern Ireland will celebrate their 25th anniversaries on Friday. The government is doing all it can to support the Independent Commission for Reconciliation and Information Recovery in delivering effectively for victims and families. Significant progress has been made since the ICR-IR was established in December last year, and I expect the Commission's doors to open on the 1st of May.
Jeff Smyth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the light of this morning's High Court ruling, does the Secretary of State still think that the citizens of Northern Ireland should be the only people in the UK to be denied the right, after the 1st of May, to seek justice for crimes committed in the Troubles through civil case and inquest?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. So, Mr. Justice Colton handed down his judgment at 10:15 this morning. It's a very complex case. I'm told the judgment runs to over 200 pages, and I am yet to see it. It will take some time to consider, but we will consider Mr. Justice Colton's findings very, very carefully. But we do remain committed to implementing the Legacy Act.
Karin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is deeply concerning that the government's own imposed 1st of May deadline means that inquests will be unable to conclude, likely to be. We've heard reports that there was only one specialist in the MOD dealing with these inquiries, and that possibly the MOD delays in providing material has caused additional hold-ups. So we really do need to understand, what is the government doing to ensure that the inquests are able to conclude by the government's own self-imposed deadline?
Secretary of State.
I thank the honourable lady for her question. I'd humbly like to remind her that actually the original deadline before the amendments that we tabled in the House of Lords before this bill became an act was for the 1st of May 2023, and this is an extra year. And the government continues to assist Northern Ireland courts in good faith in relation to legacy matters, and there is no question of the government deliberately seeking to frustrate inquests. The Act contains provisions allowing a coroner to request a review of a death by the Independent Commission, led by Sir Declan Morgan as Chief Commissioner, if the inquest has not been concluded via the coronial process by the 1st of May 2024.
Secretary of State Hilary.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. The Government's Legacy Act is opposed by victims' groups, all of the political parties in Northern Ireland, the Northern Ireland Human Rights Commission and others. This morning, the Belfast High Court has found that the immunity provisions of the Act are not compliant with Articles 2 and 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights. Given that immunity has always been presented as the central foundation of the Legacy Act, what do ministers intend to do about this judgment, and how can the Commission become operational when one of its central powers has just been struck down?
Secretary of State.
I'd like to thank the honourable gentleman for his question. As I say, this is a very complex case. Over 200 pages, which were just being reported on less than 90 minutes ago. And so it will take some time to consider. But we do remain committed to implementing the Legacy Act, including delivering the ICR-IR.
Benn.
Recognising that the issues raised in today's judgment will take some time to be conclusively determined by the higher courts, assuming that the government appeals, does he agree that it would now be quite wrong to close the door on inquests and civil cases from the 1st of May, which will deny citizens in Northern Ireland the rights that citizens in the rest of the UK take for granted. Therefore, will he now extend that deadline, not least to ensure that those inquests that would otherwise be stopped on the 1st of May are able to continue so that a decision can be reached?
I thank the honourable gentleman for his question again, and he's quite right. This is a complex case and is likely to head to further court cases, further action in higher courts. But I do want to consider this judgment carefully, and I want to look at all the 200 pages and take the legal advice that he would expect me to take in such circumstances. But we do remain committed to implementing the Legacy Act, including delivering the ICR.
James Daly.
Number 3, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I would like to answer questions 3, 5 and 13 together. The Government is fully committed to protecting and upholding Northern Ireland's place in the Union, a commitment we reaffirmed recently in the command paper Safeguarding the Union. This included new measures in domestic legislation to protect unfettered access to the UK internal market and affirm Northern Ireland's constitutional position as set out in the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. We believe this Government is convinced this is the best way we can safeguard Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom.
James Daly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. What action has my right honourable friend taken to ensure that no new regulatory borders between Great Britain and Northern Ireland can emerge from future agreements with the European Union?
Thank my honourable friend for his question. We have actually ended the presumption of automatic alignment with EU law by making clear that the very narrow set of goods rules which apply in Northern Ireland are subject to the democratic oversight of Stormont, including the Stormont break. Once the break is triggered for a rule, or where an entirely new rule is brought forward, it will be for the UK to determine at the Joint Committee whether that provision should apply in Northern Ireland. Here again, the Government has established the protections available through statutory provision. So we believe there are very strong reasons that we can say that we have ended the presumption of automatic alignment.
Simon Baines.
Mr. Speaker, may I congratulate my right honourable friend and Minister Baker on their very impressive achievement in restoring the Northern Ireland Executive? And would he agree that good cross-border transport links are vital to safeguarding all parts of our union, such as, in the case of my border constituency of Clwyd South, the electrification of the North Wales main line linked to the northwest of England, and improved road links, such as the proposed Panllanamynant bypass between Wales and North Shropshire?
I have to congratulate my honourable friend on making some very excellent constituency points, as well as highlighting the very important need for good transport links across our union. This was actually recognised in the Safeguarding the Union command paper, where, and indeed more recently, earlier this week, when we talked about the reinvestment of money that would have been spent on HS2 in its northern sections for good connections across our country, including the A75, which is a vital connection connecting Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Dr. James Davies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Union is strongest when people can see and feel the benefits to their daily lives. Does my right honourable friend agree that a prosperous Northern Ireland with stable, devolved government is the surest way to safeguard its integral place in the United Kingdom?
So State.
I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his question, and I absolutely 100% do agree with the sentiment there. And it is a real pleasure to see the devolved institution at Stormont up and running. You, Mr. Speaker, have a new colleague. The former Speaker had been desperate to retire for 2 years. Tributes were paid to Speaker Maskey at the time, but Speaker Poots is now in place, and it's been wonderful to see the new First Minister and Deputy First Minister working together to try and achieve good solutions in public services and a whole host of other things for the people of Northern Ireland. And the Union is best served by devolved institutions working, and I welcome very much indeed everyone's commitment to that cause.
Hannah.
Minister, this This morning's High Court ruling confirms what every fair observer knows, that the government's legacy legislation is not compatible with human rights. It puts the needs of perpetrators ahead of the needs of victims, and it is not supported by any party in Northern Ireland or across the island of Ireland. He cannot truly believe that it serves the rule of law or our shared future in any constitutional arrangement. When will this government repeal this completely unacceptable legislation?
Secretary of State.
I'm afraid she'll, and I thank you for her question, but she'll have to hear an answer that I've given previously, because this court judgment was only handed down earlier this morning. It is a very complex case. There's over 200 pages to consider. I don't even believe the government QC has gone through it yet in any great detail. We were not given any notice of what might have been contained in the ruling beforehand. And so, but we will, I do obviously pledge that we will consider Mr. Justice Colton's findings very carefully, but as I will continue to say, we remain committed to implementing the Legacy Act, including delivering the ICR-IR.
Dave Dougan.
The recent Safeguarding the Union command paper claimed to copper-fasten Northern Ireland's political and constitutional place in the Union, yet the British-Irish agreement makes it clear that the agreed position is for the people of the island of Ireland alone by agreement between the two parts, respectively, and without external impediment to exercise their right of self-determination. How does the Minister square this clear contradiction in the UK Government's commitments to all the people of Northern Ireland?
I thank him for his question. I mean, firstly, getting the devolved institution in Strand 1 of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is of vital importance, because it actually means that the Strand 2 institutions can work properly, which work for everybody across the community, all communities. It also allows the Strand 3 institutions to work in a better way by including representatives like the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister, things like the British-Irish Council. So there's a whole host of things. And the Belfast Good Friday, but when it comes to constitutional status of Northern Ireland, that obviously requires the consent of a simple majority of its people, and all the provisions of the Belfast Good Friday agreement still stand.
Jim Shannon.
Sorry, is that me? Yes. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, one of the great things about and importance in this case is the education system and the trips that people bring to come here. So if we want to safeguard the Union, can I ask this question? What steps have been taken to ensure that students in Northern Ireland have equal access to education tours in Westminster, bearing in mind that the cost to fly over can be prohibitive, and would consideration be given to additional funding to allow some sort of subsidisation? If we can, the students from Northern Ireland can have the same access as those in England.
I thank the honourable member for his question, and I mean, Northern Ireland, by being separated by the Irish Sea, is obviously in a geographic location that makes it difficult to travel to other areas of the United Kingdom. And I understand his keenness to help Northern Ireland students benefit from learning across the Union. We did put in place a financial package for the incoming executive that helps achieve some of these objectives by providing £3.3 billion to support Northern Ireland's unique challenges. But if he has individual cases, I'm sure I'd be interested to hear about them and what we could possibly do in the future.
We now come to Geoffrey Donaldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And further to the question from my honourable friend, member for Strangford, will the Secretary of State join me in welcoming the fact that the new UK East-West Council will have its first meeting next month in Belfast, and that one of the key objectives is actually to encourage greater educational cooperation across the United Kingdom, as well as binding Northern Ireland more closely into the wider economy and the UK internal market?
I'm very happy to join him in welcoming the new East-West Council and its situation. I mean, and obviously looking forward to seeing the North-South Ministerial Council functioning. The UK East-West Council will bring together a wealth of experience and knowledge from representatives from the United Kingdom Government, devolved administrations, business representatives, educational leaders, as he suggests, and representatives from the cultural sector. And we're committed to it getting to work in March and doing good things.
Geoffrey Donaldson.
The Secretary of State referenced earlier the financial package that the Treasury has put in place to support our public services in Northern Ireland. But there remains a significant gap in the next 2 financial years in relation to our commitments on public sector pay. Will the Secretary of State work with us to seek further support from the Treasury to ensure that the Executive lives within its budget, but that we are able to pay our public sector workers a decent wage for the vital work that they do?
And I thank my right honourable friend for his supplementary, and again, if I may, pay tribute to him for all the work he's done on making sure that the devolved institution of the Executive and the Stormont can come back together. It is an amazingly good historic piece of work that he has achieved. And yes, it is good to see the Executive back up and running and making these choices and opening negotiations with the unions to get the public sector back on track when it comes to pay and work in Northern Ireland. And I know there will be meetings, I believe a meeting today between the Finance Minister and the Chief Secretary of the Treasury, but I'll always happily work with him on all these agendas.
Boris Robertson.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I'll answer questions 4, 6 and 15 together. The Government is committed to the economic growth of Northern Ireland, working closely with other UK departments, the newly formed Executive and NI businesses. Our plan includes boosting trade and investment, building on the success of the Northern Ireland Investment Summit last year, levelling up Northern Ireland's economy, including through our city and growth deals worth £617 million, and implementing the key deliverables of the Safeguarding the Union command paper. Only last night, Mr. Speaker, I attended Retail NI's supplier showcase, and I'm very grateful that I made it back first thing this morning.
Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank the Minister for that very full answer. Could I ask him, given that the rest of the United Kingdom, the internal market, is the biggest market for Northern Ireland, what role does he see for the new intertrade, particularly with respect to trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Well, Mr. Speaker, he's absolutely right about Northern Ireland's most important economic relationship being with Great Britain. The Government is working to establish Intertrade UK as set out in the command paper, fulfilling our pledge to grow the economy by ensuring that businesses, large and small, can maximise the full range of east-west trading opportunities. Implementing the Windsor framework and the command paper are, of course, Government priorities, and I'm pleased that I'm responsible for them. We will, of course, update the House in greater detail at an early opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Safeguarding the Union command paper states that there will be no checks when goods move within the UK internal market system, save for those conducted by UK authorities as part of a risk-based or intelligence-led approach. Regulation 13 of the Windsor Framework Retail Movement Scheme regulations requires officials to check the ID numbers on the seals of all retail consignments entering Northern Ireland and break open 5 to 10% for visual inspection. Is my right honourable friend now able to confirm when and if this regulation will be removed?
Well, I'm most grateful to my honourable friend for his insightful and well-researched. Perhaps I shouldn't have got that early flight after all, Mr. Speaker. Well-researched question. As we set out in the command paper, as we transition to the UK internal market system, through our risk management approach, we will provide clear legal direction to DERA and other UK government authorities to eliminate any physical checks when goods move within the UK internal market system, except those conducted by UK authorities and required as part of a risk-based or intelligence-led approach to tackle managing risk through criminality, abuse of the scheme, smuggling and disease risks. I recognise the importance of my honourable friend's question, and I can say that I will update the House on our plans in greater detail at the earliest reasonable opportunity, which I hope and intend will be before we break for the Easter recess.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's good news that the Executive is back up and running. Will my honourable friend ensure that the new Executive take a full advantage of all the devolved capability they have, in particular on taxation, to encourage the private sector to grow and thrive in Northern Ireland?
Well, I certainly will give them every support, Mr. Speaker, whilst also, of course, respecting the devolution settlement. But to just give him one example, the reason I was there last night with Retail NI was in order to promote a Department for Business and Trade's terrific offering in Northern Ireland, which includes a trade and investment hub, which covers the UK Export Academy, Export Support Service, and there are now 16 DBT export champions, including making available in-person support. If anyone wishes to know in greater detail, I recommend they go to the great.gov.uk website.
Speaker, will the Minister liaise with the relevant departments in Northern Ireland to maximise the benefits that, for example, the only enterprise zone in Northern Ireland in my constituency can be promoted and developed, along with the excellent broadband facilities that are the best in these islands, to promote our economy, to bring inward investment and create prosperity?
Mr. Speaker, he makes a great case for his constituency, and I certainly would like to see terrific levels of investment into it. But I'd like us to go further. I'd like us to see that investment zone right across the whole of Northern Ireland, and I hope and expect that together the UK Government and the restored Executive will make the most of that opportunity.
Patrick Grady.
Why does the UK Government think it's a good thing for the Northern Ireland to have access to parts of the EU single market, but not for other parts of the United Kingdom, particularly those parts of the United Kingdom that voted to remain in the EU and the single market?
Well, I'm most grateful to him for his question, of course, Mr. Speaker. But he'll know two things. That, of course, this word access is somewhat contested, and I'd encourage him to go and have a look at the trade figures for trade between the United Kingdom and the EU and just satisfy himself of the effect of our leaving the European Union. And the other thing I'd say to him, in all seriousness, I think all of us should reflect very carefully on the status of Northern Ireland and the particular circumstances, not only of geography but history. And it is because of the unique status of Northern Ireland that we've been able to agree unique arrangements. And I do not imagine the European Union would have agreed these unique arrangements for any other territory.
Shadow Minister Fleur Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to a Northern Ireland Affairs Committee report, Northern Ireland received proportionally less than Scotland, Wales and England in the first round of levelling up funding. In the latest round of funding in November, not a penny was allocated to Northern Ireland, and the government said that this was because the Executive wasn't sitting. So is there good news for the people of Northern Ireland today? Now that power sharing has been restored, will the Secretary of State update the House on discussions he's had about ensuring a fair share of the levelling up funding goes to Northern Ireland?
Mr. Speaker, of course the Honourable Lady raises a very important point, and I will be glad to continue conversations with the Executive. As she knows, we've made available a generous package of £3.3 billion overall. We continue conversations in the detail of those areas of funding which have been repurposed. Those conversations will continue, and when we can update the House in fuller detail, of course we'll be glad to do so.
Stephen Bonner.
Question number 8, please.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Government is working to establish an East-West Business Council, as set out in the command paper, fulfilling our pledge to establish a unique forum for key representatives across the United Kingdom, from government, business and the education sector, to identify opportunities for deepening connections between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK in important areas such as trade, transport, education and culture. I shall be in regular contact with other ministers across government to ensure the timely delivery of this commitment.
Stephen Bonner.
I thank the Minister for his answer. The Economic Centre of Excellence has estimated that 80% of Northern Irish freight exports to England comes through Scotland, while a considerable proportion of NI trade with Britain is direct trade between the north of Ireland and Scotland. So given this, what concrete role does he see unproposed for the Scottish Government in any new East-West Council?
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course the Government of Scotland has its rights and is entitled to be part of these arrangements, and we shall be respectful in engaging with the Scottish Government to make sure that they play a full part, fully respecting the devolution settlement.
Sir Oliver Hill.
My right honourable friend agree with me that the Northern Ireland members of the UK-EU Parliamentary Partnership Assembly play a very important role, including the right honourable gentleman for Lagan Valley, in improving the understanding between the EU and the UK about the way in which the trade and cooperation agreement should work. and easing the way for a better relationship between the United Kingdom and the European Union.
Mr. Speaker, I do agree with my right honourable friend, and I pay tribute to the leading role that he plays in that forum, and I'm most grateful. I think a large number of colleagues, whatever their view on exiting the European Union, have put a great deal of effort into building up the bonds of friendship, which are so important as we go forward under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And I'm most grateful to him for highlighting the important work of that forum, and again I pay tribute to him for his leading role.
SNP spokesperson Richard Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The East West Council has proposed is something that I'm personally very enthusiastic about, because it provides potentially a space to open up where Scotland and Northern Ireland can cooperate along with other parts of the UK in all that we have in common economically, socially and culturally, and that will continue to have in common irrespective as to whatever constitutional arrangements might be in place in future. So will the ministerial team at the Northern Ireland office agree to meet with me so that we can discuss how Scotland could play a positive role in that and to get that engagement with other parts right?
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, of course, we'd be delighted to meet with him to discuss those matters.
We now come to Prime Minister's question.